The second egg that I want to give you is the egg of leadership. Jesse Jackson says that leadership cannot just go along to get along. Leadership must meet the moral challenge of the day. Let me repeat that. Leadership cannot just go along to get along. Leadership must meet the moral challenge of the day. Think about a young Frederick Douglass, born being told he belonged to somebody. And somehow this young Frederick Douglass learns to read and spends his entire life in public service. And the most important task that Douglass took on was fighting to eliminate slavery. And fighting to eliminate slavery when slavery was the law of the land. He was a leader. And he was a leader who didn't just get along. He was a leader that took responsibility for trying to make better his life and the life of others. A young Martin Luther King in Montgomery, Alabama, 1957, didn't just get along to go along. He became a leader. Yes, he was drafted. Yes, he was pushed. That frequently is what happens. But he did the right thing. So I want to suggest to you this morning, my young friends, that leadership cannot just go along to get along. Leadership must meet the moral challenge of the day. I don't know what will be your compass, but find something that you believe in and work to get it addressed. The third egg that I want to give you is the egg of faith. Here's what Oprah Winfrey said about faith. She says, "It isn't until you come to a spiritual understanding of who you are, not necessarily a religious feeling, but deep down, the spirit within, that you can begin to take control." And so I present to you the egg of faith. Now, if you think you don't know what faith is, let me try to tell you what it is. Faith is reaching out, not knowing whether or not there's something to grab hold of. Faith is crossing the street and not knowing whether or not there's going to be a truck coming down rambling at about 70 miles an hour and going to knock you into the next county. Faith is being a young Martin Luther King who has never known nothing but segregation. Martin Luther King was comfortably preaching in Montgomery, Alabama, and somebody said, "We got to support Rosa Parks because she sat down on the bus and they put her in jail." King didn't know what was going to happen, but he reached out in what we may call blind faith. And look where we are now. Look where we are now. And so I give you the egg of faith to withstand perhaps your friend who's saying that college stuff ain't nothing. Or maybe members of your family may say you need to stop and go to work and get a job. Faith is that thing that pushes you over the edge. Faith is that thing that's going to keep you going. You've got a little handout that I've created, which includes ways to fail. And one of the ways you can fail is not having faith, not having a spiritual underpinning. You've got to find a way to keep moving on. The fourth egg. Well, before I go to the fourth egg, I got to talk to you about Clyde Philippe. Clyde Philippe went to Haiti on Christmas vacation with his mother and was caught in this harrowing experience during the earthquake. He saw devastation, And I'm quoting Clyde now. He saw devastation and dead bodies in the streets of Port-au-Prince, a mere 2 blocks from the airport. The same airport where he waited for evacuation to Santo Domingo for hours on end. The sick and the injured surrounding him, all without water and hope. In a desperate email, Felipe told us through a local news media that U.S. Embassy officials formed a line to the plane for journalists and Caucasian Americans. Only, even as the elderly began fainting around him, and tensions rose and a fight broke out with only those who fought in front of the camera getting on the plane. Now, this young man's strength, this young man's tenacity, this young man's faith got him back home. That's the kind of faith that I want you to have. That's the kind of sense of responsibility that I want you to have. That's the kind of leadership that I want you to have. The fourth egg, persistence. The story I just shared with you about Clyde Felipe is about persistence. He could have said, Mom, let's just go somewhere. We can't handle this, and given up. But he did not give up. That woman who was under the rubble for 2 weeks didn't know whether she was under the rubble for 1 day or 2 days or 2 weeks or a month. It's hard to imagine being somewhere dark and enclosed and not knowing what time it is or what day it is. But somehow you managed to hold on. That's what I call persistence. Booker T. Washington wrote, success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which one has overcome while trying to succeed. And I'm willing to bet that each one of you has a story to tell. Each one of you has a story to tell. You don't have to tell me, you don't have to tell the faculty, but I want you to repeat to yourself daily what that story is, because that story is what's going to see you through. You know where you want to go. You know where you've been. You know where you want to go. You know where you've been. Persist. Hang in there. Things will surface. Obstacles will come as a fact of life. People will put obstacles in front of you. They will say you're too old. They will say you're too black. They will say you speak with an accent. They will say that you're gay or lesbian or transvestite. They will say that you're a man. They will say that you're a woman. They will say that you came from Jamaica. You didn't come from Guyana. They will say that you came from the Dominican Republic. They will say anything to get you off track. You must persist. You must persist. And the moment, if you can't think of your personal story to keep you driving, think about John Lewis. How many know who John Lewis is? Raise your hand if you know John Lewis. One hand is up. Well, John Lewis was a college student. Was it 65? 65, they're walking across the Pettus Bridge. And those cops beat the living daylights out of them. And there are pictures in every major civil rights book now of blood streaming down the head of John Lewis. John Lewis survived, though, and John Lewis is a congressman in our United States Congress. John Lewis survived. But those 3 civil rights workers in Mississippi, they didn't survive. They were shot and killed. They persisted. We persist. You stand here, sit here on a foundation laid by people who gave up something for us to try to do the things that we're doing. The 5th egg that I want to give you. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Everybody knows who Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is, I'm sure. Here's what he said. He says, I think that the good and the great are only separated by the willingness to sacrifice. The good and the great are only separated by the willingness to sacrifice. Now, it's easy for Kareem to say that. But let me talk about sacrifice for just a moment or two. I won't be long, y'all. Preachers say that, don't they? How many of you know who Medgar Evers is? Let me see your hand. Okay, most of the hands are up. How did Medgar Evers die? If you know how he died, hold your hand up. Okay, okay. Imagine you live in New York and you can't vote. Just imagine for a moment you live in New York and you cannot vote, and the only reason you can't vote is because the white controlling power says because you're black you can't vote. Or the white controlling powers have said because you cannot spell the word rat, and some illiterate person read that you spelled it R-A-T, and they said no, it's spelled R-A-C. You can't vote. Medgar Evers was simply trying to register black folk to vote. And what happened? He got shot, killed in his driveway. In his driveway. Sacrifice. Martin Luther King, killed in Memphis, Tennessee. I want you to understand sacrifice, y'all. I want you to understand sacrifice because what we will ask you to do is nothing like the sacrifices that have been made for you and I. The final egg I will give you is the egg of vision. So I can do it. Egg of vision. Mary McLeod Bethune, founder of Bethune-Cookman College, tells a story about how she created Bethune-Cookman College, which is located in Florida. And Bethune-Cookman College is now located on what was a garbage dump when Mary McLeod Bethune had her vision for what she wanted for the students down in Jacksonville, Florida. She had a vision. She knew what she wanted. She wanted a college for students. Most folks saw a garbage dump. She saw a college. You have to do the same thing. In spite of all of the things you see around you, you got to see yourself as a doctor. You got to see yourself as a lawyer. You got to see yourself as the next black president of the United States of America. You've got to see yourself as a nurse. You've got to see yourself where you want to be. You see it, you can envision it, it can happen. It can happen. I've taken up more time than I should, and so I'm going to take my seat, but as I do, I want to remind you, Tuesday evenings from 5 to 7, I see evening students drop in. Fridays from 1 to 4, drop by. It so happens that this Friday, the chancellor has a retreat for all of the CUNY presidents, so I won't be around this Friday. So, but drop by and let me take a look at you. Read the handout on how to fail at Medgar, because one of the things that I'm asking you to do, not only drop by to see me, drop by and see your faculty. Go by and tell them you love them. They're going to be very surprised, and they probably will love you back. People like to be nurtured and supported and stroked. Thanks for putting up with me. Have fun here at Medgar Evers College.